Hey everyone, welcome to Module 4 of our class. Believe it or not, this is the halfway point of the course, and midterm grades will be posted next week. A couple of just housekeeping issues before we jump into the work for Module 4. If you have missing work, if you have late work that you would still like to turn in, I accept late work without penalty. So please make sure that you are turning that in. And if you would, just send me kind of a quick message just saying what you've turned in. That way I know to look for it. It doesn't always pop up here. It sometimes does, but just to be sure, I don't want to miss something that you've turned in that you want credit for, obviously, that I didn't see. Okay, so moving on to Module 4. Last week, you had the culmination of your summary response essay, where you were to write a summary of one of the articles in our closed research theme, and then provide a summary for it in Module 3. This week, we're going to start our second writing project, which is a comparative analysis essay. And so there's a lot to do, unfortunately. Module 4 is a heavy load in a lot of ways, and so we'll jump right into it. So the two chapters you're going to read this week in They Say, I Say are chapters 5 and 9, and you'll do tutorials on those as well. And so make sure you're reading those and taking times for that as well. The main crux of what I want to talk about, though, is our second writing project, which is the comparative analysis essay. This, in many ways, is probably the most uncommon type of writing that you will find in this course. What I mean by that is I'm certain that you've written summaries of things before and responded to them, and our project 3 is an argumentative essay, and I'm certain that you've written one of those as well. What falls in the middle is a comparative analysis, which honestly kind of bridges the gap between summary and response to argumentative writing, but isn't often covered in high school courses or even sort of more beginning college classes. And so essentially what you're going to be doing in this essay is comparing and analyzing similarities and differences between two of the closed research themes. What I like to suggest, this is not a requirement, but what I like to suggest for students is that one of the works that they use for this assignment um, be the essay or the article rather that they use for the summary response, because you're already familiar with that. And so it might be easier to pair one that you already are pretty familiar with. Okay. Um, and so there's a couple different ways to go about doing this. And so the first thing is you want to pair two apparently different texts that contain some important similarities. And so your analysis would be where you're kind of providing the information on both of those texts and then telling how they're similar, even though they appear different. Or you could compare two apparently similar texts and then can then describe and write about how they are different and why that is important. The why that is important part is what separates a comparative analysis essay from a compare and contrast essay. So in a compare and contrast essay, you're literally just comparing and contrast. This essay says this essay says this, they both say this, but you're not getting to that point of saying, this is why that matters, or why this is why it's important, or this is how this difference sort of puts a wedge in the conversation or elicits more conversation about this topic. And that's really what we're focused on in the comparative analysis. You're picking texts that for some reason pair well together, either because they seem similar and do something differently, or they seem different and do something similar. Um, and basically, you're kind of teasing that difference or that similarity and trying to justify why it's important. Okay. And so that's kind of what you'll be doing throughout. Um, I really encourage you to read through this. I'm not going to belabor the point and read this to you. It's there for you to read. The essay instructions do a really good job of explaining exactly what you should be doing. And so the half draft is due in Module 4. We have an added element this week as well. So you will actually submit your half draft two places. You will submit it here, obviously, where you normally submit for my grading, and you will also submit it in the Module 5 discussion board for peer review. So we'll begin our peer review process, the first of which we'll do those for the last two essays as well. So make sure you're doing that. Okay. So as we scroll through this week's work, this is the tutorial for chapter 5 of They Say, I Say, and then the tutorial for chapter 9. So we'll get through those quickly. And then the other assignment we have this week involves your discussion board. So we want to think about how to annotate a text. This is very important for our comparative analysis essay. So make sure you're watching this video, which is really well done on how to annotate a text. We do have these closed research theme check-ins. Again, these are not graded. They're just checked for completion, but they are very crucial, especially this week would be very useful as you're trying to determine which of your which of the two you're going to be using for your comparative analysis. Okay, so this week's discussion is a little different and a little odd, I think. And so what you're going to be doing is you're going to be engaging in what is known as a panel discussion, and there's an example of those here. What you'll be doing is embodying the voice of an author of one of the closed research theme readings. Again, I will highly recommend you work smarter and not harder and use whichever one you're going to be using for the comparative analysis draft, one of those two. And so you can either write and respond in the voice of that author, or the voice of someone who is sort of responding to which the closed research theme. So you're playing a character in a sense, okay? And so what you need to do here is identify yourself as the author or respondent, and then in the voice of that character, respond to these questions, right? And so you're using what you've learned from the text to anticipate how they would respond to these panel discussions, right? So in that, you probably need to read the text a couple times, which is why, again, I'm very strongly recommending that it be one of the texts that you use for your comparative analysis. That way you're not reading like 400 different things this week, okay? So make sure you're doing that and then responding to your classmates. And again, to have full credit to get the exceeds expectations or the 30 out of 30, you really need to have 4 posts on 2 different days. Your initial post, and then on a different day, respond to 3 classmates. Okay. I know it says 2. 2 will only get you 28.5 points. It's stupid. I didn't make it. But it is what it is. Okay. So keep that in mind as you're going through Module 4. This will really helps show you the elements of a comparative analysis. Please go through this slide deck if you're struggling with understanding how to format your comparative analysis and really what it entails. That's a good place to start. All right. This worksheet here for comparative observations is a good tool as well as you're starting to do the work of your comparative analysis. It's probably not going to load, but essentially what it is a place to put your ideas about each of the texts that you're working with, what's similar about them, what's different, what is crucial. Of course, it's going to load as I click the next button. All right. We also have some supplemental information here, including sample papers on Project 2, help guide for MLA and APA as well, which you should always check out. Okay. And this is the space for you to submit that half draft. And essentially that is all for the week. Again, I really recommend you check out the rubric. This is what I use to grade your work. This is what I'm going to be determining how well you do on this half draft as well. Okay, and so that is it for week 4. It's kind of a lot. As I mentioned, you'll submit it 2 places. You'll also submit it in the peer response for next week. We'll do peer review next week. It is kind of a lot. I grant you that for one module. So make sure you're getting your start early this week. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, and have a great week.